Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Look, we've had a lot of requests to do a really detailed explanation on this specific topic. So today, we're diving right into neural rewiring. Specifically, we're looking at how to literally break the cycle of learned behavior. If you're the kind of person who wants to know exactly how your mind operates under the hood so you can perform at your absolute best, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to look closely at the mechanics of why we do what we do, and more importantly, how we can actually change it. So here's a question for you. Why do certain mental habits strongly resist change? I mean, we've absolutely all been there, right? You recognize a habit you really want to break, you make this rock-solid plan to stop, and yet, in the heat of the moment, your brain just clings to that stubborn behavior. It feels almost impossible to shake. Well, today's source material explains exactly why this happens, and it actually gives us a structured roadmap for fixing it. Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, the brain's unique wiring and how we leverage it. So the training module we're analyzing today doesn't treat our stubborn mental habits as some sort of hardware flaw. Instead, it approaches the brain's uniqueness as a set of rules. And to understand those rules, we have to look at something called partial reinforcement. The source defines this as a learning process that creates behaviors which strongly resist change and are exceedingly difficult to extinguish. Let's unpack that jargon for a second. When you learn a behavior through partial reinforcement, you aren't rewarded every single time you do it. You're only rewarded sometimes. And because your brain never knows exactly when that reinforcement is coming, it clings to the behavior with, honestly, incredible tenacity. It's always waiting for that next unpredictable reward. That's exactly why this specific type of learning creates the absolute strongest, most resilient habits in our minds. Now, what's really interesting here is Section 2, the trap of partial reinforcement, and why it's exceedingly difficult to extinguish. The text from the module is absolutely clear on this point. Learned behaviors resist change and are exceedingly difficult to extinguish. Notice the severity of that language. We aren't just talking about minor quirks here. The module validates that these deeply ingrained, partially reinforced behaviors form a literal neurological trap. And it's a trap that requires a deliberate, structured approach to dismantle. So if you've ever felt frustrated that you can't just, flip a switch and change a mental habit overnight, this validates exactly why it's so tough. Let's move along and see how this builds in Section 3, reactions during a conversation, moving from autopilot to conscious control. And this brilliantly illustrates the everyday reality of talking with other people, because let's face it, that's exactly where these stubborn habits usually show up. We basically have two very different modes of operating. There's the unconscious reaction, which is that learned behavior, the autopilot response driven by partial reinforcement that just kind of slips out of your mouth before you can stop it. And then there is conscious control. The core aha moment of this whole module is forcing ourselves to distinguish between the two in real time. Think about it. When someone speaks to you and you feel a sudden surge of emotion, or maybe a defensive thought pops up, are you just reacting based on those old, partially reinforced pathways? Are you stepping into the driver's seat and exerting control? The module lays out a very specific methodology for this. It actually states that participants must realize how they react and how they shall control during a conversation with others. Notice the order of operations there. Self-awareness is the absolutely crucial first step. You literally cannot exert conscious control over a habit until you first realize exactly how you're reacting on autopilot. You have to learn to catch and observe that split-second neurological impulse before you can even think about altering it. Which brings us to the action phase in Section 4, breaking stubborn mental habits, practical sessions for rewiring. So the crucial point is that insight alone just isn't enough to overcome behaviors that are this difficult to extinguish. We have to move into active rewiring, and we do this through a logical sequence. Step 1, realize how you react in the moment. Step 2, actually exert control and change your response during the conversation. And Step 3, break those mental habits through dedicated practical sessions. The source explicitly notes that participants have practical sessions to break mental habits. Look, because these pathways are so deeply entrenched by partial reinforcement, it requires repetitive, real-time practice to forge a completely new neural route. You are literally building a new bridge in your mind, and for sure, that takes repetition. All right, let's summarize our core takeaways from the module. The ultimate goal here is to leverage the unique wiring of our brain, rather than fighting against it. We've got to acknowledge that behaviors learned by partial reinforcement are going to put up a massive fight. But by bringing conscious awareness to our daily conversations, we can actually catch that autopilot, overcome the resistance, and actively extinguish those difficult behaviors. And finally, we solidify those new pathways through dedicated practical sessions. It's a complete scientifically grounded roadmap for totally changing how we interact. I want to leave you with a provocative thought today to wrap up this explainer. How much of your next conversation is going to be an autopilot reaction? And are you ready to rewire it? The next time you find yourself reacting instinctively, just remember the trap of partial reinforcement. Try to catch that reaction, take a pause, and choose conscious control. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep learning, keep rewiring, and we'll see you next time.